Hello, it's Sunday, May 8th, 2016, and as of this recording, I'm still depressed, but I'm not dead. Hey, welcome back everybody. I appreciate each and all of you for downloading the show and giving a listen every week, maybe twice a week. Some big news today for the podcast. I've kind of hinted, made a couple promises, and finally the day has arrived here on Mother's Day that my significant other, the one, the only Nora, is here joining me on the show. Say hi.
Hi, everybody.
So we had talked previously about wanting I tried to pressure Nora into doing a podcast with me. And then I started up this little venture, and it's something that she wanted to lend her voice to, and we'll let her explain that in a little bit. But just a few housekeeping things. Just wanted to remind everybody you can get a hold of me on all forms of social media, be it on Facebook at facebook.com/Jamolki, on Twitter, just with the handle Jamolki, or by email at jamolki@gmail.com. And the website is kind of up and running, and those of you who fall in love with Nora as I did today listening to her, she's promises she's going to do some blog posts there. So head on over there and take a look, see what's going on. So I guess,
what's that website address?
Oh, www.jamolki.info.
And how do I spell Jamolki?
You know this. Jamoalki.
I just thought your listeners might not remember.
Oh, they know. They know me oh so well. So without further ado, let's get going. Okay, so here we go. Nora, you've said hi. Everybody's good friends with you. So, I mean, if you don't mind, I kind of butted myself into your intro there as far as why you thought you wanted to be part of this this podcast, I guess, this look into the life of me. So why don't you, if you don't mind, give us a couple minutes of what your thought process was.
Well, I think that as I listened to your first few podcasts after you told me you were doing this, because you kept it secret for a little bit, I was struck that I wanted there to be another perspective, because I think one of the challenges that people with depression have is a whole lot of, negative self-thought and negative self-talk, and that means that's their perspective, but it may not be the view of a lot of other people around them who know them and care about them. And I think you referenced in a more recent podcast that this is a shared experience, that your struggle with depression has influenced the lives of people that you share your life with, and that's for sure true for me.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of eye-opening for me when I realized that.
So I think to the degree that I can offer some perspective on that experience, that could be valuable either to other people struggling with depression or maybe to their family members and loved ones. So. Okay.
So here you're getting two sides of the ball here, two sides of the coin. Two sides of the story, hers and mine. Okay. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you want to? How about you give us a little bit of your background? I mean, obviously you've learned a bit about mental illness through me. You're welcome for that education. But
thanks.
But you didn't come into this without any experience.
No, not at all. So I guess I would say my first exposure to people struggling with mental illnesses that weren't just, movies or TV shows or other kind of baloney stuff was actually with my dad. So when I was in 6th grade, we were living in Atlanta, and he started having, I guess, a lot of stress and anxiety. And what I knew as a kid was that my mom would wind up taking my dad to the ER in the middle of the night because he felt like he couldn't breathe and that his throat was closing up. And after this happened, I don't know, 3 times or something, the folks at the hospital suggested that maybe he was dealing with something, something else going on, and suggested that he consider checking himself in. And he did that.
Wow.
I don't know now, right, how many days that was.
Right.
It might have only been a couple. In my head, it was like a week. But, that was a real thing. And certainly from a stigma perspective, it wasn't something I was telling my friends at school. It wasn't, right? Oh, my dad's checking himself into the mental health ward at the hospital.
Right. So, 6th grade was what, 84, 85?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was still... I think it's the fall guy of movies, but like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right, was just painted an awful picture of what the loony bin, or whatever they would have called it,
the psych ward. I mean, even that has negative connotation, right?
Right. Oh yeah, even still today.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that stress was about us getting ready to move to Japan. And I wasn't aware of really anything after that until my parents went through their divorce, which was in, would that be 93?
Okay.
And after I graduated from college, I moved home, and there was a point when I took my dad to the ER for a similar kind of stress attack, I would say. He was at that point in therapy already, dealing with the emotional upheaval of going through a divorce after 20 plus years. And then a few years after that, I started grad school and sort of had my own introduction, I guess, into true mental health issues. I mean, I think I'd had the normal high school self-doubt and angst and sadness and all of those things. But my first semester in grad school, I really just thought I was a failure, thought I couldn't possibly get through this and do this and be successful. And I wound up going to, campus health services, and they put me on an antidepressant. Also, the doctor wanted me to eliminate caffeine altogether, which at that point in my life was
crazy talk.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
But I did it.
Okay,
and great. I made it through that semester. It wasn't. I think it was my hardest semester of grad school in a lot of respects. But I came out of it better and went on to, finish grad school with honors. But I stayed on the meds and just tried to, sort of be in a good place and be healthy. And I stayed off caffeine. Yeah. And then I went off the meds and thought everything was sort of hunky-dory. And then I got pregnant with and immediately kicked into very notable depression symptoms that, thankfully at that point I recognized. They weren't foreign to me.
Right, yeah.
And so I called my midwife and told her what was going on, and she referred me to someone who put me on meds even though I was pregnant. And their take was, better to have a mom who is managing that, even if the baby gets, microscopic exposure to the meds, versus having a mom who's significantly depressed and or suicidal or whatever. The risks were greater to not dealing with my challenges.
That's interesting. I don't know a lot about that. I don't know today where we are with medication. If a pregnant mom needs some sort of antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication, what the common feeling is on that, if that's...
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, for me, it was, I knew what was going on, and I knew it wasn't just going to magically go away on its own. And in talking to the woman who prescribed meds for me, she said, there is no testing. They can't have a control in a study group and determine if it's safe for the baby, because if it's not, they've done something really, really horrible.
Right, yeah.
But there is some evidence just based on outcomes of women who maybe have had a long history of mental illness before pregnancy and stay on their meds, or people like myself where they can at least look at it and say, is there evidence of a negative side effect from doing that?
Yeah.
Another sort of, I don't know if anyone cares, but another sort of interesting little tidbit was that they actually said that breastfeeding after that was a good transition for the baby because it would step down the baby's exposure to the meds.
Titration. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was a sort of a positive that was part of my plan anyway.
Right. And it seems like I've read things where, postpartum depression is a huge thing.
Huge.
But nursing moms, I think it's not uncommon for nursing moms to be on antidepressant medication.
Yeah,
Just interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. That could be your first blog post.
I'm going to do medical research.
Yep.
Is that what's happening
Yeah.
there? Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's most of my history until I ran into you. My ex-husband had some of his own challenges with anxiety in particular and social anxiety, but it was never, I don't know, a big thing. It was never a huge presence in our lives.
Right.
So, and then I met you.
You met me.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to save with how you view me and how you viewed me to come out in different shows.
Okay.
Because I think it'd be interesting. Obviously, I tell stories from my view, which admittedly is a cloudy view and maybe not the most optimistic view of myself.
Nope.
So, we just didn't celebrate, but we just had like our 2-year kind of first Facebook messaging. So whatever Hallmark, get on that. But so I think it'd be interesting to see what your view of me was and how it's kind of traveled over the past 2 years.
Well, and I think, that is part of my thinking about blog posts is that I think I said this to you the other day that I'm interested in the idea of listening to your podcast and taking notes and then crafting my sort of observations or whatever as part of a blog post because I'm a sissy about doing recordings like this.
And kind of be my fact checker and say, oh, no.
Well,
no, you wore a blue shirt that day.
No. Maybe that.
Yeah.
But I was thinking more of things like, your perceptions of, let's pick a topic from one of your prior, of your faulty memory and just my own sense of, is your memory really that faulty, or are you just harder on yourself about the same sort of natural mental gaps that I think most of us have?
Sure.
Without offering an opinion on that at this time.
At this time, fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, don't embarrass me in front of the fans. Okay. So, but maybe you could. I know you've kind of had this conversation on Julio's podcast. With then break the stigma, now defeat the stigma. But maybe as a kind of a primer into us, do you want to talk about a year and a half, 14 months ago, 15 months ago, when I had my attempt?
Is
that a little too deep?
I kind of want to save that for another. That seems like a specific.
That's pretty big
story, right? That could be most of a show.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure I want to go there today.
Okay. So, so this will be a shorter show. It is Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And there are children for you to go see and packing you up and shipping you out of town and all that. So I don't want to go too long with this one, but do you have kind of at the top of your head maybe a few ideas of what you'd like to see come of this, your participation in here?
Well, so if I refer back to Julio's podcast, I think one of the things that came out of that for me and a little bit for his wife when she told her story was the idea that there's not great resources of support for the family members of people who struggle with mental health issues, right? If you think about addiction groups or whatever, there's often the family arm of whatever, Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a family version of that. And there doesn't seem to be as much for mental health issues. And maybe part of that is because there's such a wide range of mental health conditions, and how each individual experiences them are different. And so there's not a...
Right, yeah. There's such a huge range, and then a huge range within any particular diagnosis.
Right.
Also.
And a huge range of then their family members and what they need and think. But so, part of my goal in being part of this is to maybe try to give you a more balanced perspective on some of the things you're hard on yourself about, but also to share some of the challenges and struggles that family members experience. For any story you tell, I could probably tell my own of the other side, whether it be about your attempt or whether it be about, things you've shared with me and how that impacts me emotionally. And the conundrum of, I think for me, wanting to sometimes pretend it's all not there and, close my ears and go la 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 la, but knowing that that's not gonna help you, and it's not gonna bring us closer, and it's not the right thing to do.
Right? Sure.
So
okay. One thing, and I'll put it in the blog post that goes up with this, but one resource that is kind of available for families, and it's not, I haven't looked into it too much, but NAMI, was it National Alliance for Mental Illness? Is that what it is? I
Something
think so.
like that, yeah.
And they're either NAMI.org or .com or whatnot, and I'll find that out. But they do have groups and educational resources for family members of those with mental illness. So if you are a family member or have a family member who's dealing with your mental illness or someone else's, kind of check them out, and I'll put the link because I'm not sure if I think they're a .org, but who knows these days. So, and again, I don't know much about it. I just know that it exists.
Well, maybe I need to check it out and report back.
Maybe
on a future show.
Maybe. And the every other week groups I go to with DBSA, Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, they are open to anybody who wants to come. So I think I mentioned that way back when, but we never really brought it up again. But
yeah, and I don't know. I think the conversation is different, right? I mean, it's potentially good perspective for a family member to hear about other people's struggles with mental illness, but I think the family member's struggle is a unique perspective.
Right. Yeah, I think the DBSA meetings are good for kind of, if you went, then you would be able to see, oh wow, it's not just JP. It's kind of a weird comforting situation where, okay, yeah, this is going on all around, and maybe you don't feel quite so isolated or whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. So maybe I think we need to get you your own email address associated with this.
That's a good point.
If you're on semi-regularly, you may end up with more fans than I do, and a nicer voice than me. So yeah, everybody, this is Nora, and if we are putting blame, responsibility, what's the positive form of blame? Credit to me doing this podcast and kind of being here to do this podcast. I think a lot of the credit goes to Nora, and you've been terribly good for me, and I thank you.
Terribly good. That's an interesting choice of words.
Terribly
right there.
Good. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we can get into that another show.
Well, I'm happy to have you around. You know that.
Yeah.
And I want, if this is a way for you to share and work through stuff and enables you to feel like you want to stay around, then that's a win for me. So I'm all for it.
Awesome. Okay, so tell the folks where they can find us. What's their website?
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Okay. So, like I said before, you can always get a hold of me on Twitter at the handle Jamolki, on Facebook, facebook.com/Jamolki, jamolki.info, as well as
Jamolki@gmail.com.
that one right there. Thank you so much. So, unless you got something else you want to say, profess your undying love for me to the world, we'll just wrap this one up.
Well, I do love you.
I do love you. Okay, folks, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you really soon.